going on, Dunces family? We are back with another episode of the Dunces Podcast. As you can see, we're here. Isandro's got a lot of things going on in his home. Hear the plates smashing and pens clicking. Isandro is here
You
with
hear
me
that?
again. Oh yeah, I hear all of it. Your mic is that good, bro. it's it's lovely.
All
He also
right,
has a
all
nice
right,
plant
all
behind
right.
him. I appreciate it. You know. Yeah, Isandro, what's going on, bro? How you doing today?
I like plants. Doing good.
Yeah, we recorded a non-sports the other day. It will be out on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. I believe that is what 12 p.m. West Coast time. I don't know. I think it's 2 hours behind, 3 hours behind. I don't know. The time change is all weird. Won't be that way
We'll
next
we'll
year though.
figure it out, West Coast fans. Please be
Just for
patient.
y'all, the two of you guys that exist. But we are also back with our element. If you guys didn't see our last post, was the Kevin Durant news. So we did kind of deviate from our main stuff, which is kind of just talking about every single NBA team until the NBA season starts. But we're back to it today with the Los Angeles Clippers, and I know I'm wearing my Nets uniform, but this is old Nets. This is when they made it to the finals that one time, oh, back to back. But today we're not talking about the Nets. We're talking about the Clippers. The Clippers have had a pretty eventful offseason, I would say, right, Isandro? I mean, they made one addition, really. They did lose one guy, but we'll get into that in just a few seconds. But wow, your plates are loud, bro. That's crazy. But anyway, let's discuss this because you're the one that's actually been wanting to discuss the Clippers more than I have. I mean, that's not true. I think we've been, pretty much the same on it. But you were the one that really wanted to get into it. So, what do you think? This past season, right? They lost. They didn't have Kawhi the entire year. Paul George got hurt, and yet they still managed to make it to the play-in, right? Led by a team with Reggie Jackson. They pulled off a trade for Norman Powell and Robert Covington. Zubac is a solid starting center for them, and Batum really came into his own after leaving Charlotte and going to LA. He's been great, nothing but a great addition to the team. So, how do you feel about this past season? Let's get into that first. How do you feel about this last season that they just went? And what do you think? You're on mute, by the way.
I did click the button, but it didn't register.
It's okay.
I think that's my computer problem. Um, what was I saying? They did good for the cards that they were dealt. We knew it was kind of like a dead season.
Yeah.
Kawhi could have came back earlier, but because it was Kawhi and because the season was kind of already a wash, he didn't. So he stuck.
Yeah.
He stayed behind, but it was for the best with the way things shook out.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I'm in that same like boat, like in that same line of thinking because Kawhi, yeah, he probably could have came back, but I mean, what was the point? They were playing team. Paul George did everything he could. They definitely could have won. The Pelicans were just more hungry than they were in that game. That's what they lost to, right?
I think, yeah,
Pelicans?
probably. I think things definitely took a shift when Paul George went down with injury, and then they slipped through the rankings.
Yeah,
Maybe if he didn't
he
and
was
he
balling
somehow
though.
kept them afloat, yeah,
He was
and if he
balling.
kept them afloat, then
Yeah,
things would have been different.
and we got to give a shout out to Ty Lue. Ty Lue really is one of the best coaches in the NBA. I mean, I know that
Shout
a
out
few.
to that one podcast that we
Yeah,
dropped
I was just about to
questioning
say
his
that.
legitimacy.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I was about to name drop ourselves. Shout out
What
our
was your take
stupid
on that?
2 years old. Oh, I was all for Ty Lue being LeBron guy. Like LeBron was the one that made him win that championship. Because I mean, look, my point back then was David Blatt had them as the 1 seed. Like David Blatt. In reality, that was LeBron. Like LeBron had them in the 1 seed. And then in the playoffs, Derrick Rose hit that shot on the Cavs, and then the very next game, Ty Lue, starts running a play, and he's like, no, like LeBron takes the clipboard away and he does it. And so, in my defense, it was LeBron's team that won that championship. It wasn't Ty Lue's. But now with
Derrick
especially
Rose hit a that was David Blatt, bro.
no, that was Ty Lue.
2015, David Blatt was the one who was calling timeout, and then LeBron,
You're
like the
right. You're
NCAA.
right. I'm thinking of when yeah, I'm thinking of David Black doing doing that thing where he stood on the sideline, and then Ty Lue pulled him out.
Hmm.
So what was my point? I don't remember my point. What was my point? I think my point was just that I hated Ty Lue at the time because it was just like I didn't understand why he was favored, in that like everybody was talking about he's an X's and O's guy, this and that. I don't know. The thing was I was wrong, obviously, and he's
Hmm.
definitely proven everybody wrong. He is, if
Everybody,
not
all his
the best,
doubters.
yeah, if he's not the best, he's definitely one of the best head coaches in this league today. And it's really great to see him and that team um, actually having a good roster this upcoming season. And with that in mind, their roster has had one significant signing this offseason. The Rockets officially waived. Wow, that was loud. The Rockets officially waived John Wall. And so what did they do? The
Picked them
Clippers
up.
picked them up. Now they got their point guard, really, who could potentially start or come off the bench for them, depending on what happens in training camp. But how do you feel about this addition? Do you think that it's a good addition? Do you think it's like a meh addition, or is it just the name? Is it the name as the reason why they signed them? Like, what
We're
do you
gonna
think?
have to wait to see because we've talked about it on this pod before. Players that come out and then they haven't really been balling, they haven't really been playing, but then they go into a different situation and everything changes. So we gotta wait to see if John Wall really is hooping again. I mean, he was. I mean, I don't really think he was hooping for the Houston Rockets before he got shut down. Like you could say the numbers were good, but the efficiency wasn't. His defense
Yeah, but
dropped off. Everything.
he's never been an efficient player though. Like if you think about it, like he's never actually
Yeah,
been
exactly. So the
efficient.
fact
Yeah,
that the efficiency dropped off from an already inefficient point, that was kind of not looking good. But now he's got spacing. He's in a different situation. He's got a better coach, better system. It's going to be interesting to see. Maybe he is going to take a little bit of a step back and not be so ball dominant because he's got those two superstars next to him, and he
yeah,
can kind of just focus on being playmaker. But John Wall, who was one of the more underrated playmakers of the past generation, of the past 5 6 years,
yeah,
like pre-injury, John Wall was one of the best playmakers in the league. So if he can, get to 70 80% of that, that's literally all they need, the
yeah.
Clippers, and then you got yourself a contender.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. Do you think that this team, with the addition of John Wall, is a legit contender? Not just any contender, a legit contender to make it to the finals in the West. That means going up against a team like the Warriors, a team like the Nuggets, a team like Memphis, if they actually get healthy. Do you think that the Clippers are actually at the top of this Western Conference?
I think that they were legitimate contenders before signing John Wall, but they just had to
Hmm.
pick up the pieces, and they figured that out last year. And then Kawhi got injured, and then they took the eventual finalists to 6 games. I
Yeah,
mean, we figured out that they were frauds, but still, it was nice to see them even being so depleted. They had two members out of their starting five actually healthy, and they still took them to six.
yeah,
So that was the year that I feel like they actually figured it out. This year, still injured, and they still managed to make it to an eighth seed an eighth seed in a competitive West. And, we've been saying that it hasn't been as competitive as the East, but the East kind of just rose to the level of the West, and the West kind of stayed the same. So the West was
yeah.
still really competitive, and they still got to
It
a
was
play-in berth.
injuries this
It
year.
was
Yeah,
the injuries, exactly. That was exactly it. Now you're getting a player that, yeah, he's not at the best point in his career. Obviously, it's not peak, it's not prime John Wall.
right.
It might be post prime John Wall, but you're getting a player that essentially addresses the biggest complaint that everybody has had with them,
With
other
this
than
team.
the coaching that they switched up and they finally fixed,
Yeah,
and that was a lack of playmaking. Kawhi and PG, they're essentially the same player. It's basically what the other side of the coin is on the east side is
the
Boston, and we'll
Celtics.
get into that a little bit later on about their deficiencies and how they were able to deal with that. And it's the same thing with the Clippers, and they addressed it, and they got somebody who's really going to put them in their spots. I feel like.
And I actually wanted to ask that question. It's great that you brought up Boston because that was literally my next segue into it. Because I'm definitely gonna ask this question once we do this podcast, the Boston podcast with Joel. Stay tuned for that. It will be happening really soon. Um, was that trade, the Brogdon trade to Boston, and we'll definitely get into more detail with it. But was that Boston trade with Brogdon kind of like the equivalent to what's going on here, bringing in
That's
like you
exactly
basically
it.
said it, like is John Wall going to be that exact missing piece, or is there something else missing, or is he just that guy that they needed? Like, what do you think?
So on paper, like what I just said, they both two sides of the same coin. Both teams have two small, combo kind of. They can score, they can defend,
Combo
but
forwards,
they
yeah,
can't really play make. They can't really play make. Their two best players are that. Both teams are that. They have decent centers. Boston has a better center, but the Clippers have a deeper roster, better coaching. So
yeah,
essentially, it was like the East version or the West version of whichever team, right? Basically, what I just said, about the coin. So the fact that both teams had the same problem and they
and they both
both got
addressed
a
it.
playmaker,
Yeah,
it feels like on paper they both fixed that problem. But we
right.
kind of have to wait and see because Brogdon, he's been injured, and also we
Same
don't
goes
really
with
know
John
if he's
Wall.
gonna really be good for that team because we've seen it happen before. John Wall, obviously, we know his problems, not even just the injuries, the fact that he's been out of commission for so long. I mean, yeah, he can acclimate throughout the season, but he still not might be the same player
Yeah, right.
that we even think he's going to be post injury. So
Yeah,
I guess again on paper it's totally different from how we like. We really just have to wait and see like if that problem really is addressed for both teams.
yeah. No, I completely agree. I think the Wall pickup was great, but when you look at it from the injury side of things, it could be a little scary. That's why the depth that this team has is so important, and they have so many guys that won't even probably get any minutes that got minutes last season that really balled out for this team. So I'm really excited to see what these guys got going for them. But with with all that, the roster construction, having Ty Lue at the helm of all of that, does is he like kind of like your favorite or one of your favorites for the coach of the year? And if so, like how good of a coaching job do you think he's going to do with this team? Like where do you think he'll get them when it comes to seeding and when it comes to the playoffs? Like, do you think that this is the perfect fit and the perfect roster for him?
Yeah, the roster was so deep. I mean, you have the list. You know how the players that are on it. We'll get into that in a bit, but we're potentially looking at an 11-man roster, and if players underperform 8 or 9 players in the playoffs, which is still insane.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to be coach of the year, but I think he'll be like his name will be there just out of consideration for him. But they won't have the position, they won't have the seating because we know Kawhi is going to load manage, and now we actually understand it. We've always understood it because he's had the championships to kind of back that up. But now
yeah,
we really do. Him coming off of that ACL, he's going to load manage, take some games off of the season, and they're not going to be a top 1 or 2 seed that is essentially required to get that
right.
man
To get that, yeah,
his to get not even just for him to get his award, but for anybody to get any award. Like if Paul George balls out and has a good season, but he's like a top 4 seed, because I don't know, maybe with how the league's been looking, he might be up there, but I think maybe the little bit of a voter fatigue of not giving somebody like a lower seed that that award again, I really think it would hamper him and just in general. But definitely Ty Lue, even if he doesn't win it, which he probably won't, he's still of that caliber. He is
right.
still that kind of coach.
Yeah, definitely top three, top five head coaches in the league. X's and O's, just um, a really good coach for this team, and I'm really excited to see what he has in store. Um, you kind of alluded to it. The regular season, load management is going to be a huge thing for this team, and not just with Kawhi. Paul George is going to definitely get time management. Um, this John Wall is another one who definitely will be in need of it because he hasn't played professional ball for a full 82 season like ever in his career, right? So um do you think that's going to be kind of like a hinder for that team, or do you think that by the time the end of the season rolls around, they've had played too many like enough games together that they'll be understanding of each other's weaknesses, of each other's strengths? Like when it comes to playing basketball, yeah, you can just go out there and lace up and just start balling. But at the same time, you need a structure. Do you think that structure is going to be like a little off because of this time management, or do you think Ty Lue is going to be able to fix that, up by the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, have you ever heard the saying, winning solves every problem or winning solves everything or something like that, right?
Yeah,
I feel like you tweak that a little bit. Spacing solves everything. And it comes to the NBA, if you have spacing, you're good. You'll figure it out. And
yeah,
this team, like, I can't look at this and just say like, oh, they have 10 or so shooters, but they have at
they have
least more than
snipers,
4 or 5 shooters. They can have a full
right?
5 out of just straight up snipers.
Yeah,
So the fact that your only problem would be to like the load management and to kind of acclimate a non-shooter when literally everybody else but him in the center can't shoot, and
yeah,
like everybody else besides them can shoot. That's a good problem to have. Like they'll figure it out. Even if they don't figure it out, worst case scenario, they already have a winning formula that they know that they can go back to. They have a fallback option.
right.
It's not like the Lakers where, oh, the Russell Westbrook thing doesn't work out, you could bench him. That's a whole different problem. And we'll get
Yeah,
into that later on, obviously. This is completely different. And Clippers are really set up for not only this season, but potentially a couple more seasons of contention with the way the roster is
yeah,
constructed.
yeah. I mean,
Depending on,
these guys are in their early 30s, so technically their prime. You know, it's
How old is Kawhi? He's like 30, right?
I think he's like 31, 32 probably,
And Paul George is around the same age. So it's
same
like,
age. All three of them
it's not
really.
like
All
a
three.
It's not
Yeah,
like yeah. They're
yeah.
all. I
They
mean, obviously Wall is post injury, but
right,
the
of
fact that
course.
the other two guys aren't. Well, Kawhi ACL,
Yeah,
not an Achilles, but still an ACL. It looks good. It looks good. Like I completely forgot that these guys were relatively
early
young
30s.
because
Yeah,
every time we've talked about superstars and being in the championship window, like we talked about the Warriors, we talked about the Nets, or we briefly talked about the Nets for a little bit. It's all been aging superstars, and especially the Lakers, aging superstars, Miami, aging superstars, aging
right.
supers. Yeah. So these guys that aren't even like aging like that, I mean, they're like on the good side of
Of
like
30.
under
Yeah,
35. They're under 35.
yeah.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah,
I
they,
don't
they
know.
definitely they definitely have a chance to be contenders for at least, the next 3 years. That's including this upcoming
3 years, I
season
think,
and
barring any injuries, obviously.
of course. And that's like the biggest scare with this team. It's just injuries if you think about it, because if
Injuries.
not, like we mentioned, they have, you know, basically 11, 12 man rotation if they wanted to, right? Um but with such a big rotation, at the end of the day, like you mentioned, you're gonna only play around 8, maybe 9 guys, but 9 is pushing it. Usually, typically, it's 8 to 7
It
players
might
in the
be.
playoffs. Yeah, yeah, but
It is. But we've
my
never. I mean, we have seen something like this. But the fact is, like, usually it shrinks to 8 or 9. But that's because you play the players who can perform, right?
yeah,
So the roster is like 11, and then it shrinks whoever doesn't perform. So it might be 8. It could be 9 or 10. It really depends. Like I don't
who
expect Reggie
performs.
Jackson and Terrence Mann to completely ball out every season, but that's the kind of like amazing thing about this. You can kind of plug and play. Let's say Reggie Jackson has a couple bad games. Okay, I pull you. I'll put in Luke Kennard. It's a different skill set, but it's still a spot on the 5 out. Let's say he's not. Maybe we need something a little different. We got Marcus Morris, senior. It'll always be, I feel like 9, because
Yeah,
it'll be like that ninth guy just
right.
always switches. Like if it's not one guy, then it's like a
Yeah,
hydra. You cut off one head,
like the
maybe not
sixth man,
specifically
the
that, but
sixth man of the ninth guy in the rotation. Like he's like just the backup to the
it's like
backup to the
literally a
backup.
rotation.
Yeah,
It's literally a rotate. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just like you're doing bad. All right, you're out. You're coming
But
in now.
with that though, like don't you think that maybe a trade is inevitable for this team? Like, and if so,
You think so?
what player do you think that they should let go? That might have some what's the word I'm looking for? Might have some value. Like Luke Kennard, sure, he's on a not a big contract, but for his performance, he's always very streaky
I would
up and
want to
down.
keep him though. No,
I don't know. I mean, like I said, he's very streaky. You already got Norman Powell. He actually plays defense. He tries a little harder. You got Robert Covington, who also plays defense, tries a little harder. So I don't know, maybe like a player like Luke Kennard and Terrence Mann, because Terrence Mann is up, for a payday.
I think either or. I think I'd rather keep Luke and then give up Terrence because I think Terrence is decent,
But
but I
Terrence
feel
making
like
no money though, so I'm talking about money wise.
that's
You got to
true.
think of it
Yeah,
from a lot of different perspectives. And if so,
Mm,
what's something that they should go after? Like, should they go for a backup big? Because in reality, they don't really have one. They got Ivica Zubac starting because they lost Isaiah Hartenstein in this offseason when he signed
hmm
with the Knicks because
He was
they
good too. He
and they
was
couldn't
good.
afford him because of bringing in John Wall. So do you think a trade like involving a Luke Kennard, involving maybe even a Norman Powell who performed for you guys, like who's the one player that you might think, okay, attaching an asset to him can bring in something that this team needs, and what is it that this team needs? What do you think?
You're right, a big, but I mean, like the spacing I was talking about earlier. Like, yeah, they have a lot of shooters, but Luke Kennard is probably the best one that they have. He is streaky, but they can't leave him open. Like he's always going to provide that option.
Like
He's
the
like
Duncan Robinson
a
type.
better Duncan Robinson
Yeah,
who
it's
makes
crazy.
less money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think they have other assets that they can give up to get that center. Um,
I mean, they have
because
Moses
there's like
Brown. They got Brandon Boston Jr.,
I
Jason
don't even
Preston.
know who half these guys. I don't know who Jason Preston is. I don't. I think I know a
He was
little bit
injured
about
last
Brandon
year.
Boston,
He was nice.
and I don't know who Musa Diabate is.
He was,
Who is this guy?
I believe he was drafted this season or like last season. He's nothing special.
Uh,
I just added him there because
okay.
he had like a good like 5 minutes in the league. But then you also got Amir Coffey, right? So that's a player
Oh,
I didn't
he's
even
not on
add.
this list, right?
I didn't even add him to
Yeah,
that list because it's
I
it's
forgot.
that deep of a roster. So you definitely have players that you can trade. But what's a player
Yeah.
out there that you're like, oh, maybe this guy would work with this team, like or maybe
I
is
don't
it
know.
a
Do you
free
know any
agent?
bigs?
Is it? That's why I have some free agents here, like Hassan Whiteside, Boogie,
Nah.
Lamarcus,
Oh, Hassan maybe, but that's it.
maybe Hassan
That's it.
Whiteside. Yeah,
No,
I was
none of the
thinking
other
that too
guys.
for the defensive anchor. Just
Mm-hmm.
being there
Because
for like
they
10 minutes a
literally
night.
had Boogie. They had Boogie before.
Yeah, didn't really work out. It didn't work
Yeah,
for them.
exactly. And
Yeah.
Lamarcus retired. I don't know who Ed Davis is. Montrez.
Well, Ed Davis
Stay
went
off
to the
the
Cavs. But yeah,
who?
stay off the weed. Shout
Oh,
out Harold. Stay off the weed. That's right. But no, Ed Davis went to Cleveland. But I'm
okay.
thinking of a player that they can trade for is probably like like a Mason Plumlee, maybe because the
He's not.
Hornets.
No, not Mason. Not Plumlee. The Hornets
Why
would love
not?
to get rid of him. He is not. Have you seen
What
like
you
any Hornets
mean?
fans in like
He's a
their
solid
interactions?
player. Well,
They
he's not
no,
good for that team though, because he's starting. He's starting on the Hornets.
bro. You say he's not good for that team. They literally need a center, and he's not
Well,
good enough.
Mark Williams.
And they got exactly. I'm saying like
So
Plumlee.
so that's what I'm.
They like
No, that
they needed desperately somebody to fill that position, and he still couldn't do it. What does
but
that say?
but you got to remember Plumlee's game,
Mason
right?
Bumley, bro.
No,
It's
man.
just
Mason Plumlee is
Mason
not a
Bumley.
bad player. That's such
He's
a
not a bad
no.
player.
He's a bad player for that system in Charlotte. When he was in Denver, being the
A
backup
system.
big, yeah, the system that it surrounds a two ball dominant guards in Lamelo and Terry Rozier, right? When it comes to Mason Plumlee, he likes being in the post and dishing out. He's like a really bad version of Jokic, but he plays defense. When you saw him on the Nuggets, he played so well for them off the bench. He was, out there running for loose balls. He passed to whenever he needed to pass in a really, good capacity. Like he was a really solid player. Even in Detroit, he was a solid player for that team. But in Charlotte, it's just the fit isn't right with that team. So you're putting him here on a team with the Clippers where you can, again, 10, 15 minutes a night. It doesn't have to be so much. But basically what Zubac does, obviously Zubac is a little better because he's younger, he's a little more athletic, but Plumlee, he has the potential to help out a championship team. And Charlotte isn't a championship team. That's why I don't think he's a good addition for Charlotte. For the Clippers, I can see him being a solid player.
No,
I don't, I don't know. That's
he's a
crazy.
bum. I
That's
mean, I
crazy
disagree.
that
I
you're out here
agree to
that you're out here
disagree.
thinking. That's crazy.
He's a bum. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Yeah, let us know. Is Mason Plumlee a bum? I didn't know that. I didn't know that Hornets fans
Mason
hated him.
Bumley.
No,
Coining that
he's
phrase right now.
Mason Daddy. Um, but
What?
let's yeah, shut up.
Maybe
But
Dwayne Dedman, but I mean, I don't think
no, nah,
the
they
Heat
won't give
aren't
him
gonna
up.
try to hold on. He's decent.
Yeah, but they won't give him up. Like, another player could probably be like an Xavier Tillman. From Memphis. He is 6'8", but he would be a solid rotational, piece for that team. Um, there's so many options out there. We just probably can't think of it right now. I'm trying to think of other players. Maybe the Nets have somebody. I don't know. But the thing is that the Clippers, renting on a few players. So Luke Kennard, Norm Powell, Terrence Mann, even Marcus Morris Sr. Don't buy a house in LA. You guys can definitely be traded anytime soon. So it's pretty crazy. But I'm going to give you their potential lineup. And again, I'm always going to say this in every podcast. This is not the lineup that will be like their actual lineup. I'm just creating this at the top of my head. It's just on my mind, whatever. So at the point guard, I got John Wall. Then I got PG, Kawhi, Nick Batum, Ivica Zubac. That's my starting five. Off my bench or off the Clippers bench, you got Reggie Jackson, Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, Robert Covington, and Marcus Morris Sr. Um, of course, that could switch. Maybe Batum comes off the bench, Morris Sr. starts. It could be Norman Powell starts over Nick Batum. I don't know. Thing is, they have very
What's your 5-out
10-man.
lineup? I mean, if you take out
take out-
Zubac and
Yeah.
you want to give John Wall as much spacing as possible.
Yeah, I would say maybe Covington, only because of his height. He is one of the taller guys
I'm
in this group. I
thinking
would say.
Powell.
I was gonna say him too, but he's 6'3". Like in this lineup, your tallest guy is Nick Batum,
1, 2, 3.
who is about
How tall is Nick Batum? He's
6'7", 6'7",
But that
6'8".
is small ball though.
Yeah, no, I know, but same thing with Rocco. I would probably put Norm, defense, but when it comes to 3-point shooting, I just trust Robert Covington a little bit more.
They were running Marcus Morris
At the
against the Jazz, right?
Yeah,
And that worked.
Well, they were
So
also running
maybe just do
Batum
that again.
at the 5. Yeah,
Yeah, they did that too.
That's why I think if they go up against Minnesota, and I was gonna mention it too, like if they go up against a team like Minnesota, I think the Clippers got them. Not just because of Kawhi and PG, obviously, but
Maybe. It's
I'm
50-50
thinking
for
it's
me.
like 3. Nah. I don't
The thing is, because you
they
have
have
to
a
light
chance.
them up from 3 because you're not getting any boards.
But
You're not getting any
look at
boards
your
on that
guys
team.
though. Look at your guys. You got shooters on this team.
That's
Like
true. But
Rocco is a solid shooter. Norm Powell is a solid shooter. Terrence Mann, he really picks it up in the playoffs. And then, like we mentioned, Luke Kennard, Nick Batum, Kawhi, and PG are no scrubs. The only shooting moves that you guys have, or that the Clippers have, maybe John Wall, who's not a good 3-point shooter. Let's be real. And if it's a Zubac, and Zubac, well, he doesn't play at the 3, but John Wall could have been practicing, for the last 2 years, because that's all he was probably able to do, just sitting down, getting his shots up. So maybe he is a reliable 3-point shooter. Who knows? I'd say a team like Minnesota should be, doing whatever they can to not be positioned to go up against the Clippers, because I feel like the Clippers can light them up. And again, it goes back to coaching. It goes back to that small ball lineup that you can definitely play around with this lineup, man. John Wall, PG, Kawhi, Nick Batum, either Marcus Morris Sr., either Norm Powell, Covington. There's just so many options that you can do. Even Luke Kennard if you wanted to. Like it's such a well balanced roster. But do you think that with the guard situation, the John Wall, Reggie Jackson fiasco, right? John Wall really has to prove it a little bit more. Reggie has been balling out for the last couple seasons here. Do you think that the starting job should go to John Wall, or do you think that he should come off the bench and
yeah, 100%. He should
Oh, you
start.
think so?
Reggie's decent, but
Oh, you're
there's a
saying
reason
John
why
Wall should start? Oh, okay.
he should start. Yeah, because Reggie's decent, and he had a decent showing at the playoffs, but that was like a one and done. It was a contract. He was gonna make a bag, and players
Yeah.
always play better when they're gonna make money. Like I really don't
Well, he's
trust
been
him.
balling though. He's been balling.
He's been decent, but like he's not doing anything crazy. I was one of his biggest fans, to the point where I even added him to my fantasy team, and I told you in that pod like, oh, the Clippers are gonna go higher than the the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves,
Yeah.
because that was because I thought this guy had finally taken a leap. And he was gonna be like a stand-in second or third best player for this team, and he just wasn't that. Like he couldn't. Like no disrespect to him, but he wasn't good enough to keep that team better than what they were. So it's like
Right.
the expectations for him are kind of like, John Wall is the guy that he can be a Reggie Jackson, but I'm going to start him because I'm hoping that he'll be better than Reggie and to actually do what we need him to do.
Yeah, because
To play
Reggie's more
make.
like a scorer. Yeah, Reggie's more like a scorer. in reality,
He's a scorer.
yeah, when in reality on your bench, your playmaker really is Terrence Mann because he finds his guys all the time. Like that's what they molded him to be, a pass first player. Now it's not like he's a good pass first player. He's obviously still growing. He can definitely grow into that this upcoming season, especially having shooters like we mentioned, in Reggie, in Norm, in Rocco, and in Marcus Morris Sr. Like Terrence Mann can definitely develop into that backup, playmaker role even at his height. I mean, he's 6'5". It's not that tall, but still like he's a solid playmaker for that backup. But with all this being said, the Isaiah Hartenstein was that a significant loss? Like, do you think that's gonna like not haunt them, but do you think it was a pretty big piece that they lost, or is it just something that they can kind of
Yeah, it's
just get
pretty
over
big
with?
because he was at times better than their starting center. So having a
Zubac.
center that was literally as good as your starting center as a backup, not that the level was that high anyway, but a consistent like
Yeah,
presence in the paint, that was very underrated. And if Kawhi was not injured this season, this probably could have been their year. Having those two guys down there, Kawhi, PG, who it looks like they finally figured out like where to take the team.
right.
Um, they look like they finally figured it out. This would have been their year, and it really sucks that they're losing Ardenstein because he is so underrated.
No,
Like
he's
I cannot
nice, man.
stress it enough.
He's
He like
nice.
honestly, like people they sleep on them, and the Knicks, that was probably. I mean, Jalen Brunson was really good, but it was probably like their best signing because they didn't overpay him. Like
Right, they gave him a
they
solid a
gave him
solid
what he
contract
was.
that
Hmm.
honestly the Clippers probably could have given it to him if they didn't sign John Wall. But
But I'd rather have John Wall.
you'd rather have John Wall. That's for this team, for this roster. And I didn't even mention Zubac actually also re-signed on a team friendly contract, 3 years, 33 million. It's $11 million a year. It's not a
It's
bad
really good
contract. It's a really good contract for your starting center.
for a center that gives you 10 and 10 sometimes. That's pretty decent. Good
Yeah,
defense, rim protection.
yeah. I'm really excited to see this team. But overall, what is their expectation? Is it championship or bust?
Yeah,
Is it
championship.
conference
Not or
finals?
bust, which is kind of unique because, like you said before, there's like a legitimate 3 year window that they have.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about, and I think we've talked about teams that are definitely championship or bust. This is not one of those teams. This is one of those teams that's
Hmm.
like championship or okay, back to the drawing board.
Right. Like what can they fix to get over that hump?
They
Right.
just have to tweak a little bit back
Yeah.
at it because I really think that the only way these guys are making it to a Western Conference final or potentially like a finals is injuries and just being very unfortunate with how
Yeah.
things turn out, how things shake up, which injuries is kind of a part of that, but you've seen some crazy things happen in the playoffs. Barring anything like that, I really feel like these guys can make a deep run.
Yeah. Do you think that the Clippers are the most exciting team this upcoming season with all the players that they're bringing back and just so
I
much that they can
still think
do?
it's the Nuggets. I still think it's the Nuggets because these teams are very similar in the fact that they have both had players coming off of injuries and they both have teams that it looks like this might be their season to turn a new leaf.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but with the Nuggets, it's like they have the best player on both teams at this point in their careers, in my opinion, in Nikola Jokic,
Yeah.
and he's finally getting help. So it's exciting. It's going to be exciting to see how is that going to turn out because these past few seasons it's been the Nuggets lost in the playoffs, but they don't have their weapons. They don't have MPJ.
Right.
They don't have um, Jamal Murray. But now that's not going to be an excuse anymore. So now we're actually going to finally see,
Or
and
could
it
it
is
be?
similar to the Clippers.
Yeah, could
Yeah,
it be because of the injuries too? Like these injury histories, with let's say they don't perform in the play, or not that they don't perform, but let's say Jokic performs at an All Star level, and then his guys are and in the Clippers case, let's say Paul George performs, he exceeds expectations, but Kawhi is a little off because of his injuries and John Wall, like which one would be more disappointing? Would it be the Clippers or would it be the Nuggets?
see, that's why I'm saying Nuggets because the
Mm,
Clippers is highly more unlikely. With the Nuggets, it's 50-50. You don't know if Jamal's going to come back the
right.
same. you don't know if MPJ with those back problems is going to come back the same. You don't know. Like, you're hoping that there's the signings that they made this season are really going to come in clutch. And I'm loving
Yeah.
KCP as a signing. He was perfect for them. We talked
Right.
about this,
Yeah.
but you don't know. It's the uncertainty that makes the NBA so exciting. You have no
Yeah.
idea with the Clippers. Yeah, there's always been uncertainty with the Clippers. Who would have thought? Not me, that they were going to blow a 3-1 lead, right?
Right. To the
So
Nuggets. To the Nuggets.
so it is the
That's
Nuggets,
right.
but the Clippers I feel like they're a little more consistent now. Like, we know we're going to get from Kawhi and PG. We just
Yeah.
don't know about John Wall, but that's one player compared to potentially 3 or 4 on the Nuggets. But it's close. It's close. What about you? You think it's the
No,
Clippers?
I think it's the Clippers. For one thing, I don't know what it is about the Nuggets. Like I like the Nuggets players, but I also don't like the Nuggets. I don't know. I have a weird thing with the
What do
Nuggets.
you mean?
I don't think that like I see them and I'm like, yeah, they're a good team, but I don't think they'll ever win a championship. Like honestly, like I don't think that
You
that
don't
that
think Murray?
team
Oh, yeah.
like I don't see like the like I love the signings that they made. And if there's any season that that the Nuggets actually have a legit chance, I think it's this year, but then I look at the rest of the league and I'm like, they're not better than the Clippers. They're not better than the Warriors. Memphis,
Mm,
if fully healthy, I'd probably give it to Memphis because they always look a little bit more eager. Like I feel like the Nuggets play a little
mm,
bit too passive to my liking. It's a little Spurs esque. Back in the day, like it was just kind of just not boring to watch, but it just doesn't please me. I don't know how to explain it, but
I feel
um,
you, but I feel like they're better than those teams that you mentioned, except for the Clippers, simply because
better
of
than the Warriors.
Jokic.
Holy crap!
I know. Okay, they can't. They're. I feel like they're going to be better than Memphis. But if things go horribly wrong, I'll leave my take here and then I'll just eat the bullet. Right? I'll bite the bullet. But I think they can be better than the Warriors. It's probably not going to happen because I'm thinking about it now. But it
Right?
can if we get Bubble Murray. Are
That's
we going
true.
to get Bubble
That's true.
Murray? It's unlikely, but before he got injured, he was starting to ball out. He had the 50-point game with no free throws. I think that's what it was,
Yeah.
which has never been done other than like by Wilt, or even then maybe not Wilt. I think it probably was by Wilt, but Wilt was a center,
Yeah.
so
He
it's
was.
it's
Yeah.
crazy that a
Yeah.
guard got it without free throws, which is crazy on good efficiency. Like, he was balling out before he got injured, so
Right.
we kind of have to wait to see if one, that was a fluke, that in like the bubble, because there's been talks about that, players not playing the same, whatever.
Yeah.
And two, if he's going to come back the same after the injury, because even though it is just an ACL injury, sports science has come a long way. As long as it's not an Achilles or like something too crazy or like a series of
Yeah.
other injuries, ACL is not really that bad, but you really never know. But I'm hoping that we see Bubble Murray again, because Bubble Murray was my favorite player of the whole bubble, and
Well.
I'm a LeBron fan, and I love seeing LeBron and
Yeah.
AD
Yeah.
take that. But Bubble Murray, you remember that like switch hand that it
Yeah.
was totally unnecessary, but it was it looked so clean, it was so MJ-esque. I
Yeah.
want to see that guy again. If we see that guy again, we're gonna get a better team than the Warriors.
So
But
you
it
see, like
depends,
that's my thing with like John Wall. Like I know I'm not gonna get the same John Wall, but John Wall used to be one of my favorite point guards. Like he was just watching his game, like it was just beautiful. Like it was a Derrick Rose slash like Rondo hybrid. I don't know how to explain it. Just
You
Derrick
really
Rose when
like
it
your
came to
slashers, huh? Because Derrick
I
Rose is one of
do.
your favorite
I
players
do.
too.
Derrick Rose is one of my favorite players, and John Wall is too because his defensive aggression, his playmaking, wasn't at the level of Rondo, but it was definitely up there. Just his passes to Gortat was just so beautiful to watch. So that's why I'm just a little bit more excited for this team. And then also when it comes to just basketball, the modern NBA, this team is built for that. This team is built for modern NBA basketball, which is what everybody loves, even if you don't love it if you don't love it, then you're gonna want to watch it more because it's just like, man, these guys really are annoying and pissing me off because this isn't how the NBA should be played. But frankly, they're gonna be putting up a lot of threes. This reminds me a little bit of like the Rockets when they had all these 3-point shooters around them, and like Clint Capella, right? Like Zubac wasn't at Clint Capella's level, but Zubac is still gonna put up solid numbers when he needs to. But in the fourth quarter, they're gonna bring out their small ball five and just shoot their way into winning an NBA game. Like it's going to be so exciting to watch, and I'm definitely excited for those both teams for the Nuggets and the Clippers. But with all that being said, let's give them their grade. I give the Clippers off season a solid B plus. The
I'm close. I
Hardenstein,
was gonna give him an A,
yeah, the
but
Hardenstein
I'd
loss
say
was a
B
little.
plus.
The Hardenstein loss was a little, got me a little out there, and not going after like a backup big, and having too many
Yet.
players, yeah, and having too many players that can play like somewhat the same position could be, it could be a little toxic in the locker room. So I think
Hmm.
they should address it, but you never know. Maybe I could be wrong, but yeah, I give them a B
I think it's a
plus.
good thing. I think
Yeah,
that's where we differ, because of the plug and play we talked about.
plug and play. Yeah,
But
no,
I
I
do
get
see
it.
what you're
I get
saying.
it. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season for them. So let's hope that the Clippers curse is over. Let's hope that they can make it to the finals, or maybe at least Western Conference Finals, and prove so many years of hate wrong, against that team. But with that being said, thank you, Sandra, for joining. Thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, and hit the like button down below. Shout us out to all your friends, families, cats, dogs, sisters, brothers, and mothers. We will be posting this on YouTube and on all Google, well, not Google, podcasting platforms like Google Podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, so many of them out there. So please shout us out. We are also on Instagram, on Twitter. We still have yet to make the TikTok, but one day maybe we'll see. But with that being said, guys, we love you and peace.